I have been really enjoying painting these little doodles lately, where I'm just using these postcards to create different washes, to create these different paintings, and I'm really loving this kind of look. So I thought, why not paint something with you today along those lines, so we can share the process together, and you can use whichever paints that you want to join in with us. You're going to need just a couple of supplies. I'm using one of these postcards. These are from Etcher, and they come in a little box like this. Okay, they're a box of postcards. I think they cost about £25–30, something like that. Just use a small piece of watercolour paper, any paper that you like. So these are roughly A6 size, okay, and they are a not surface or cold press. I really like that kind of paper because I think it lends itself well to this kind of style of painting. So we've just got one piece of paper here. Now I have drawn a little design on the paper. And if you want to do this particular design, I do provide you with a free traceable that you can find over on our free level of Patreon, my gift to you, so that you can join in with us here on the Wonders of Watercolour and just trace it down by scribbling on the back and using a pencil to go around the outside, so that it transfers onto the watercolour paper. You can use whichever design that you want to, but I like this kind of design, and I've chosen a couple of colours, Water Lily and Rosehip from Deep Light. So we have a lovely aqua blue colour with a bright, vibrant orange tone for our background wash, which we're going to put on first of all, and then we need to leave that dry. So I'm going to just section off the outside first of all with some washi tape. Use whatever you have to create a frame around the outside of your painting. This washi tape that I'm using isn't the best quality, and I'll be honest, I have to move quite quickly with it to get that sharp edge that I'm looking for. I'm just going to put this on. You need to just create a nice little frame around the outside, but one that removes fairly swiftly. You don't want something that's going to stick to your watercolour paper. I'm going to mix up some colours. So I'm using two colours from Deep Light because they are my favourite brand. I am a brand ambassador, and if you did want to treat yourself to some colours from that brand, you can use the code Deep Ray, and you can get 10% off those, or these two colours, or any colours that you want to treat yourself to from Deep Light. But I'm just using Water Lily, which, let me show you on my swatch card, which is this beautiful bluey green tone. It's like an aqua colour, but it's just got flecks of green and yellow. And I'm also using Rosehip, which is this beautiful vibrant orange tone. If you have treated yourself to Ray's Blooms palette, then you'll find this colour in there. But use whichever colours that you want to for the background. I'm using my 1/2 inch flat from Craftamo to mix the colours and apply them. So just going to add a bit of water to activate that pigment. So this is Water Lily first, and then we need a puddle of this gorgeous Rosehip. Is a really, really vibrant colour. But any colours that you fancy for the background, that's what it's all about, okay? We don't want to be too fussy today, but I'm just going to mix a little bit more of that. So with a clean brush and making sure that this is stuck down, I'm picking up the blue and then just pushing this down the middle of the paper like this, using my 1/2 inch flat brush. Use any brush that you want to, something that gives good coverage, and then cleaning my brush, picking up that beautiful Rosehip. Just add a bit more. Just let it blur into that colour. Just patting it on like this. Cleaning my brush, patting it on my kitchen paper. It's slightly out of shot here. I'm just taking off the excess and then just sort of merging them together with a little bit of water. So we've got this nice kind of merging of these two colours. And then we just have to be a little bit patient and let this dry before we do anything else. I've chosen these two colours. I think they work well together, and we're just merging them together slightly. I don't want too much of an overlap, but I do want them to look cohesive. Just using my brush, just taking off that excess. And then I'm just going to turn this around, and while it's still damp, I'm going to remove the washi tape, so we've got a lovely, clean looking frame. And all we can do now is let this dry. If you want to merge the colours together a little bit better, you can just take your brush, take off the excess onto your kitchen paper, and then you can very gently move them around. But like I said, I don't want too much of an overlap, and I think part of the fun of this is just not knowing how it's going to turn out. And I'm just going to let that dry. This is going to take about half an hour to dry, so I'll be back in a little while. Okay, so this is pretty much dry now. You see that the paper has warped a little bit, but that's perfectly normal. And if it does bother you, when the whole thing is done, you can always flatten it between some books or something like that. As you can see, that's happened on these ones here. So it will warp when it's wet, but don't worry too much about that. It normally kind of figures itself out. So I'm going to mix some new colours now to mix some colours for the berries. Now this is all about having fun with watercolour. Remember, we're not going to be doing photorealism or anything like that. And speaking of photographs, if you did want the photograph that I'm working from that goes with this little outline, again, I'll put it on Patreon, completely free, my gift to you, so that you can join in with us here on the Wonders of Watercolour. I'm going to add a little puddle of water in the middle of my palette here and a few drops to mix up some colours. I'm going to start off by mixing a yellow colour to start with, and I'm going to go with Mirabelle. Use any colour that you want to. That's a nice yellowy tone. I'm going to have a nice red tone and a yellowy tone and a orangey tone. Once again, I'm going to go back in with that gorgeous rosehip that we used at the start. It kind of complements that colour there. And we need a red, so I'm going to go with cranberry. Any reds, any oranges and any yellows, okay? We don't have to go to the same colours as me. But like I said, if you did want to treat yourself to some of these colours, then you can head over to Deep Deep Light's website and check them out. So we're going to start off by just adding a little bit of colour to the berries. Now, because we've got a base colour underneath, it's obviously going to start to have this colour is going to influence that. But like I said, today we are all about just playing around with colour and seeing where it takes us. So I'm just adding a bit of water to that. I'm going to put yellow down on these berries to start with, okay? I'm using my number 2 size brush. This is from Craftamo, and at the time of filming, we have sold out. So if you were lucky enough to grab yourself a set, congratulations. We are now out of stock. I'm taking this yellow colour all over the berries, apart from the little circles that we see here. Okay, just all over, nice and easy. I could have used a bigger brush, couldn't I, really? But just take them over the berries. Don't go where the little dots are, because we're going to be using a different colour. So straight onto the paper. And like I said, this base layer is now dry, so we're just putting this onto that. So use any paper that you want to. Like I said, I'm using these little postcards because I think they're great for doing doodle type paintings. Because the colour is blue underneath, this is now taking on a greeny hue, because of course when you mix blue and yellow together, you're going to get that green tone. So just keep that in mind. If you hate that look, then maybe put a different colour underneath it, okay? But I'm not too bothered. Now that that's applied, I'm just taking my orange tone, which is rosehip, just giving it a second or two to sink into the paper, and just dropping this in. And this will go where I've added that water. I'm going to add a little bit more pigment to that. Dropping it in. This is still a little bit wet, but we'll just pop it on. And the thing with watercolour, it's very buildable. One of the great things about using it is you can layer up your paint. So I'm just going to take that onto the berry, cleaning my brush, taking off the excess water, and then I'm using this opportunity to merge this colour into the existing paint. So by doing this, you're going to get a lovely soft blur and a nice merge of your colours. I'm just using a clean dry brush, so taking off the excess water and then using that damp brush to push the paint where you want it to go. And by working small areas at a time, you can get pretty much the look that you want to. Dropping in a bit more. Taking off the excess. And just giving that a minute or two to sink in. You can see how I'm just pushing the pigment around. And you can still see some of that yellow tone underneath. These are great little paintings to do on an autumn day like today when the weather's not great, very moody weather. I'm picking up a little bit of that red tone. This one is called Cranberry, but any red that you've got, just going to drop a little bit of that in as well. Just here and there. Any red will do. I really love the paints from Deep Deep Light. They are handmade and they are very, very special, and I know that they are a little more expensive than other paints on the market. And you know, if you don't want to buy them, you don't have to. But many of you are really enjoying them. And of course, taking advantage of that discount code that I have for you, Deep Deep Ray. Look at the colours that you can get here. I mean, these are just a selection of the colours. Do have a look at their website, which I will link in the description, so you can check them out. And if you want to maybe treat yourself to some Christmas presents. I'm cleaning my brush in that little puddle, taking off the excess and just putting that through. And all I can do now is let this dry. I'm just taking it over some of that yellow colour because I don't want them to look too yellow. You just want them to look really nice and soft, so we can see these colours layering over each other. And I'm going to let that dry again. I think with watercolour you need to be a little bit patient, and just let that dry before we start to layer up and add some of these colours here and there. I'm not going to mix these colours while this is still wet because I don't want them to blur into each other. But already you can see how this is taking shape, and look how lovely these colours are. Right, I need to be patient, let that dry, and I'll be right back. The colours are dry now, so I'm going to add a bit of detail to, we're going to start off by doing the stalk. We've got a little bit of stalk here and here. I'm going to use one of my favourite colours, which is Prickly Pear. Now, if you've been here a minute, you'll know that I speak about this colour a lot. Prickly Pear and Partridge from Deep Deep Light. This is one of my favourite colours because it's super granulating, and although we're not going to be seeing that granulation here, it is a stunning colour. I'm not going to talk too much about it here, but I have painted this pine cone with it. It gives this lovely separation. It's great for browns, for painting browns or anything like that. So use any brown that you have within your kit. As I said, we're not going to be seeing the full benefit of granulation. We're only using a tiny bit of it today. So I'm just going to pop this on, working around the top section. Actually, I'm going to take it all over and then we can lift out the top bit. So taking it down the stalk. These are dry now, so I'm okay to take this colour up to the berry. Straight down the stalk, still using my number 2 size brush. Use your favourite brush, anything that you have a bit of control with. Popping that down there. And I'm taking it up this little bit here as well. We also have a bit of stalk here, or twig. Just taking that over that bit. What I'm going to do now is clean my brush in the rather muddy looking puddle of water, take off the excess, and then because we've got the top part of this is missing, we have a sort of, to give it some shape, I'm just going to lift out that little bit at the top. It gives it a bit more depth and a bit of dimension there. So I'm just going to lift that out and just give that a second. I'm going to mix some greens in a moment, but before I do, let's go back to the reds and the yellows that we've got here. So this has dried up a little bit on my palette, so I'm going to add a bit more cranberry to this mix here. And go back to the rose hip. Now that these are dry, we can start to build them up before we look at the leaves, okay? So cranberry to begin. Cleaning my brush. Sorry, rose hip to begin, I mean, and then, I do beg your pardon. Cranberry is on my brush now. So we're going to go cranberry and rose hip. Rose hip there, cranberry here, and working around this bit here. I want to build up some colour with these. Cleaning my brush, taking off the excess, and then I'm not taking the colour everywhere. Cleaning my brush, taking off the excess, and just blending it into that existing berry here, so that we've got a nice layer. Okay, on this one we're going to have a bit more orange, So this is just the rose hip. Okay, cleaning my brush, taking off the excess, and once again softening that line. This one here, cranberry, I do need to mix a bit more. I'm going to take that to this outside edge. That's blurring a little bit into that. Cleaning my brush, picking up the rose hip. Careful on this in case it's still a little bit wet. We've got that blur there. Cleaning my brush, taking off the excess. You see the pattern that's forming here. And then I'm just using that to gently merge it into the yellow tone without completely covering it, because I still want to have elements of that yellow showing through. So you've got this nice contrast between the two. Going back to my cranberry, going over that colour. And when you reach that stage, clean your brush, pat it dry, always pat it dry. You've got these lovely cute little berries, a bit more cranberry. Cleaning my brush. Just taking it gently into the yellow, but just leaving a little bit of it untouched. It just gives it a bit of dimension. And I think we'll have a lot more cranberry on this bottom one. Making sure that that's dry. I want to take this between these two. I'm a little impatient. It is blurring a little bit into that, but that's okay. While I'm doing this, I'm going to think about mixing up some greens for these colours here. And I'm going to go for, and let me see, we need a base colour to start with. So something that's going to sit underneath the colours so that I can build them up. So this is wagon green. Any green that you've got, sap, olive, anything like that. I'm going to take this all over the green tone. If you've got my set, you could use one of the greens from there. We have some nice green colours here. Something like the green woodpecker, solstice fern would work. Just happened to grab the nearest to me in the set here. So if you've got this set from Deep Deep Light Rays Blooms palette, you could use either of those greens, just taking it everywhere. We're going to make this nice and simple, all over those green colours. Taking it over the leaf. As I said, this is a nice simple exercise to do, and it will help you practice your watercolour painting skills. We're all about learning to paint as you paint here on the Wonders of Watercolour. We do not use colour theory, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me. And this is how I paint. Visually, I see with the colours that I see, and I paint them onto the watercolour paper, and that's how I've always painted. It works for me, and it seems to work for many of you. So any green colour that you like, okay? And remember, if you do want to treat yourself to these paints, and you do not have to go out and buy them, but if you would like to treat yourself, head over to Deep Deep Light. I will link them in the description. Have a look at the colours that they do. And you can buy some of these paints individually, well, many of them individually. You don't have to go out and buy a set of them. They are treats, a lovely Christmas present to yourself, perhaps. Quote that code, Deep Deep Ray, and then you'll get 10% off any of their watercolours. So if you fancy something a little bit unusual, Prickly Pear is one I highly recommend. Captain's Grey are colours that I really love. Partridge, colours that I really love. I could go on. If you would like some advice, if you want to treat yourself, let me know in the comments if you're struggling with your colours that you want to pick. And I'm happy to help you. But of course, favourite colours are subjective, aren't they? I'm just taking this over the little leaves. And we're going to let that dry again. so that we can add some more colour and some more dimension. So you can see this is really taking shape now. I'm going to go back to Prickly Pear now that that first layer has dried, and I'm going to just add a bit more of that colour to the bottom to strengthen that colour there, and then we're just going to blend that up. It just adds a little bit more pigment and strength. I'm going to let that dry again. While I'm waiting, I'm going to take Prickly Pear, watered down version, and I'm just going to add this to the middle of these little bits here. Okay, and once again, we need to be patient and let that dry, but it's really coming together now, and I'm hoping that you're enjoying this as much as I am. If you are, could I ask you to give it a thumbs up by hitting that like button underneath? And also, you may want to consider subscribing to my channel, where every week we release new content, usually in the way of a full tutorial like you're seeing here. So if this is something that appeals to you, then do consider subscribing. You won't miss out if you hit that little bell notification on the side there. It means that you'll be notified whenever I upload new content. So we're just going to give this a few minutes to dry. So while we're waiting for this to dry, it may be an opportunity for me to chat to you a little bit about our Patreon. Now, in the beginning of this tutorial, I mentioned that I give you free outlines where applicable if you want to trace down your drawing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with tracing down your outlines. It's a great way of getting your watercolour painting started without being too worried about getting the drawing done. We do give you this for free. All you need to do is head over to our free version of Patreon, sign up, and you'll get all the outlines from about 2 years ago from our tutorials here on YouTube. It costs nothing to join, and you can join at any time you'd like to, or you can also leave when you want to. So do take advantage of that. It's my gift to you. However, we do have a paid membership level on Patreon where you won't find any of the tutorials that we do here on YouTube. Why would you need to? Because we're giving them to you in their entirety. But if you do want to level up your botanical painting, well, that is what we are all about there. So let's just take a moment to see what you get for your paid membership level. When you join Patreon, you will have access to exclusive content that you just won't find here on YouTube. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just dipping your brush into botanical watercolour, you may want to join us here on Patreon, where the magic happens. And with Patreon's new collections tab, it makes accessing the tutorials super easy. When you join us here on Patreon, we dive deep into the art of botanical watercolours, from vibrant blooms to fine detail, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. We have 3 membership levels to suit your skill and budget, and we even have a mentorship and coaching level, so if you're serious about developing your skills, then this could be the level for you. And now you can join Patreon for free, which will give you access to all of our YouTube traceables, which will be delivered weekly to your inbox, so no more scrolling through for the images. So if you are ready to embark on a watercolour adventure, unlock exclusive content, and join a community that celebrates the beauty of botanicals, hit that join button, which I will link in the description. You can join and leave Patreon at any time. You do not have to wait until the first of the month like you used to back in the day. Now you can join and leave when you want to. We'd love to see you there, and it is of course a way that you can support our channel right here on The Wonders of Watercolour. I'm going to give this a minute to dry. We've done the housekeeping, and we will be right back for a final layer. Everything's pretty much dry, so I'm adding a clean puddle of water to the middle here. I need to darken up these greens a little bit now, so I'm going to go with a darker colour. I'm going to go with cedar teal. Just a random green tone that I'm picking out here. I'm going to add it to this. Remember, whatever colours you want, I'm going to add a bit to that as well. So we've got a nice darker value. Dry, or at least I hope it's dry. I'm going to create a middle vein here, just by painting around. In the photograph, there are lots of different veins, but we're all about making this a simple process today. So I'm just putting the colour to there. Cleaning my brush, taking off the excess so that we're not flooding it with water, and then I'm just blurring into the existing colour. But you don't want to colour all of that, we just want to leave a little bit untouched. Going back to the darker colour, going around, just creating this nice negative space. Cleaning the brush. And just taking that around. Going to add a bit more Mirabelle. This is the yellow colour that I used at the start. So we've got a nice kind of vibrant green tone. I suppose we've got a little bit of variation here. I'm turning my picture a little bit so that I can get into the corners. And again, I'm just going to do the same on this one. I'm not going to paint any detail, just put it on. All of these are dry, by the way. So I've just mixed a nice bright green here. And you can see I'm just repeatedly cleaning my brush, and then with that down brush I'm picking up that pigment and spreading it like this. Taking a look at this one, using that darker colour. Same process. Just having that nice blur. And on this one we've got a kind of curve. Any green. I'm going to pick up a brush I haven't used for a very long time. So this is a Sable Spotter from Jackson's. It's a number 2, it's tiny. I haven't used this brush for a long time. I don't buy Sable anymore. I prefer synthetic brushes, but I used this the other day to do one or two of these little samples that I showed you earlier on, and I really enjoyed using it. So if you've got my set from Craftamo, the number 4 would work very well. Picking up a tiny bit of prickly pear and just popping that on the end. And a bit more green. The number 4 brush from my set from Craftamo has a very, very fine point. But I haven't used this brush for such a long time, and it's a treat sometimes for me to use something a bit different. So I'm just going to colour that in. And that's what we're doing. It feels like we're colouring in. Just really simple to do. A lovely little piece. Like I said, to do on a day where maybe the weather's a little bit, you know, a little bit sad looking. And we can do these pretty, beautiful watercolour paintings and just have fun with them, you know. Just enjoy the process. Mix in some green. This is just the Mirabelle with any of the greens that I used. Like I said, I'm not going to be naming all of them because I don't want to be too fussy. But if you're looking for, you know, colours that I recommend, prickly pear, definitely Mirabelle. In fact, most of them are in my, you can use them from my set, Raised Blooms palette. Have a look at that, check it out. And, you know, just enjoy the colours that you've got. Get to know your colours. Like I said, I'm sort of making this up, really. I'm not going to the photo. But do check out their website, Deep Deep Light. These are handmade paints. They are on the spendy side. I'm going to say that because I know it has been mentioned to me that, you know, I'm only using these paints. But like I keep saying, it is my job to use paints that I love and show you, to showcase, you know, these paints. I do love using them, and I wouldn't recommend paints that I don't like myself. I'm just going to drop in a little bit of that darker colour there, any darker colour. And we've got this lovely, just variation. Clean my brush and just picking up a bit more prickly pear. That needs to be a bit thicker, so. Taking off the excess. I'll put some of the colours that I've used today in the description box. The main colours. If you want to just treat yourself, go ahead. If not, use what you have. I'm going to go back to my number 2. That one was a little bit too small for me. And I'm just taking a bit more cranberry. Just want to brighten this one up here. You see how buildable these colours are as well. Just a nice little exercise to do. And I'm going to call this finished. And there we have our finished painting. As I said, here are a few examples of what I've done using this kind of background wash technique, and you can really start to enjoy your watercolours without creating paintings that are maybe a little bit more complex, and perhaps sometimes we don't always have the time to create bigger pieces, and you can create these beautiful little postcards, and you can even send them off to somebody if you want to, or just keep them in a little booklet like as I'm going to do, just to keep them as a little reference point, things that you've painted that you can be proud of. And that is what we're all about here on The Wonders of Watercolour, creating paintings, learning to paint as you paint, visually seeing what you see and adding it to the watercolour paper, and just enjoying the process. And look how pretty this is. This took me about half an hour in total to do, but there's no rush and there's no time limit on them. Just do what you need to do, take your time with it and enjoy it. I'm going to leave that there. Check out all the materials in the description box. I will link Deep Deep Light and of course that discount code Deep Deep Ray, where you can grab your discount if you want to. But of course I will preface this, I will say as always, use what you have. It is surprising when you delve into the watercolour paints that you've got in your set, what you can find that maybe you haven't tried out before. I think this colour palette looks really good, works really well together. Check it out, do it yourself. Do join us over on the Wonders of Watercolour Facebook group, where you can post up your finished paintings and have some critique from our fantastic team and our incredible members. We'd love to see you there. Thank you for joining. My name is Ray Campbell. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.